What if the biggest reason you're waking up exhausted has almost nothing to do with how many hours you sleep? You slept 8 hours last night, maybe even 9, yet the moment you opened your eyes, your body already felt heavy. Your mind was cloudy, your patience was thinner than it should have been, and before your feet even touched the floor, part of you was already looking forward to going back to bed. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Millions of people are sleeping longer than ever before, yet waking up feeling as though they never truly rested. Most of us assume the answer is simple. Go to bed earlier, sleep longer, buy a better mattress, take another supplement, maybe try a different pillow. But what if we've been looking in the wrong place all along? One thing I've always admired about traditional Japanese living is this. Rest is rarely treated as something that begins at bedtime. It begins much earlier, with the way the evening slows down, with the way the home becomes quieter, with the small rituals that gently tell the body, the day is over now. Imagine a quiet apartment in Kyoto. The streets are still dark. The city has not fully awakened. A woman opens her eyes after about 7.5 hours of sleep. No alarm. No frantic search for the snooze button. No negotiation with the morning. She simply wakes because her body has finished resting, not because she has discovered some magical way to survive on less sleep, and certainly not because 7.5 hours is the perfect number for everyone. Some people genuinely need 8 hours. Others need 9. No evening habit can replace the sleep your body truly requires. But sleeping longer does not always mean sleeping more deeply, and time spent in bed is not always the same as time spent recovering. That is the difference most of us never learn. We think sleep begins the moment our head touches the pillow, so we focus on the mattress, the room temperature, the supplements on the nightstand, the exact time we switch off the lights. But your body doesn't suddenly begin sleeping at 10:30. It has been preparing for sleep for hours. With the last meal you eat, the light entering your eyes, the tension you carry home from work, the conversations that keep replaying in your head. Every one of those moments quietly asks your nervous system the same question. Is it finally safe to let go? And that may be the real reason so many of us wake up tired. Not because we failed to sleep, but because our bodies never fully believed the day had actually ended. So, this video is not about forcing yourself to sleep less. It's about protecting the sleep you already have. Because the quality of your night is often decided long before your eyes ever close. Today, we'll explore 5 Japanese-inspired habits that create the conditions for deeper, more restorative sleep. And stay with me until the 5th one, because it doesn't happen before bed, it happens after you wake up. Yet it may be the missing piece that explains why you've been carrying that tired feeling with you all day for years. So, if the problem isn't simply how long you sleep, what is it? I think the answer begins long before bedtime. Most of us don't spend the day running from one emergency to another. It's something much quieter than that. It's the email you never answered, the bill you're trying not to think about, the conversation that didn't end the way you wanted, the grocery list you keep rewriting in your head, the news you probably shouldn't have checked before dinner. One unfinished thought, then another, then another. None of them feel overwhelming by themselves, but together, they keep your nervous system just alert enough that it never truly relaxes. We've become so used to living this way that it feels normal. It isn't. Here's something worth remembering. Your nervous system doesn't have an off switch. It has a dimmer. It doesn't suddenly jump from fully alert to deeply asleep. It slowly moves between those two states, minute by minute, signal by signal. The problem is that many of us spend the entire day turning that dimmer up and then expect it to drop all the way down the moment our head touches the pillow. That's like driving on the highway at 70 miles an hour, slamming on the brakes, and wondering why the car doesn't stop instantly. The body doesn't work that way. Sleep isn't something your body switches into. It's something your body gradually feels safe enough to enter. And there's another part of this that doesn't get talked about very often. Sometimes we don't stay awake because we lack discipline. Sometimes we stay awake because late at night is the only time that truly feels like ours. The emails have stopped. Nobody is asking us for anything. The house is finally quiet. For the first time all day, we belong to ourselves, so we keep scrolling, not because social media is making us happier, but because we're trying to hold on to those last few minutes of freedom before tomorrow begins. Sometimes we're avoiding the silence, because the moment the phone disappears, our own thoughts show up, the conversations we never finished, the decisions we're afraid to make, the worries we've been pushing aside all day. Scrolling becomes easier than sitting quietly with ourselves. That's why taking away the phone is rarely the complete answer. People don't just need fewer screens. They need a gentler way to end the day. Now, when we talk about Japanese evening habits, it's important to keep something in perspective. Japan hasn't solved sleep. Many Japanese adults also struggle with long working hours, demanding schedules, and not getting enough rest. There is no perfect culture. No country has discovered the secret to needing less sleep. But what traditional Japanese daily life does offer is something many of us have quietly lost. Small evening rituals that create a clear transition between activity and recovery, between responsibility and rest, between the outside world and home. Those quiet transitions matter more than most people realize. Because your body doesn't just respond to the hour on the clock. It responds to the signals you give it. And the first of those signals begins with something almost everyone does every evening. Without realizing, it may already be shaping the quality of the entire night ahead. The first habit begins with something almost all of us do every single evening. We eat dinner. It sounds so ordinary that it's easy to overlook. But the way your dinner ends may quietly shape the way your night begins. Most of us finish eating, and within an hour or two, we're already getting ready for bed, sometimes even sooner. After a long day, it feels completely natural. You're tired. You finally have time to sit down. Maybe it's the biggest meal you've eaten all day. Maybe it's takeout after work. Maybe it's a late family dinner because everyone finally made it home. There's nothing unusual about that, but your body sees it a little differently. Digestion is work, not stressful work, not unhealthy work, just work. Every meal asks your body to redirect energy toward breaking down food, absorbing nutrients, and processing everything you've just eaten. The larger and heavier the meal, the more your body has to do. Rich foods, greasy foods, very spicy meals, large portions eaten late at night. All of them may keep your body busier at the exact moment you're hoping it will begin slowing down. For some people, eating shortly before lying down can also increase the chance of acid reflux or simple physical discomfort, making it even harder to settle into restful sleep. This doesn't mean dinner is the enemy. Far from it. The goal isn't to go to bed hungry, and it's certainly not to make people afraid of eating in the evening. The real goal is much simpler. Try not to ask your body to process its heaviest meal at the exact moment you're asking everything else to become quiet. One thing I appreciate about many traditional Japanese households is that dinner often has a clear ending. Not because everyone eats at the perfect time. Life is busy in Japan too. Many people work long hours and don't always have ideal schedules. But once dinner is over, the evening gradually begins changing. The lights become softer. the pace slows down, the kitchen settles, the body receives one small signal after another that says, "We're moving into a different part of the day now." That transition matters because your body doesn't just respond to clocks, it responds to patterns. If your evenings always flow from a heavy meal straight into bright screens, straight into bed, your body never receives a clear invitation to shift gears. So what should you do? Ideally, try to finish dinner about 3 hours before bedtime. That gives your body time to do much of its digestive work before you ask it to rest. If that's not realistic, don't worry. Real life rarely follows perfect schedules. Instead, make late dinners a little lighter. Reduce greasy or heavily spiced foods when possible. Try not to make dinner the largest meal of the day every single day. And after eating, stay upright for a while before lying down. Even small adjustments can make a noticeable difference over time. Of course, everyone's situation is different. People living with diabetes, pregnancy, reflux, certain medical conditions, medication schedules, or a history of eating disorders should always follow guidance that's appropriate for their own health, because good sleep should never come at the expense of good medical care. Here's the idea I'd love for you to remember. You may think sleep begins at bedtime. For your digestive system, it may begin with the last bite of dinner. But even if your stomach is finally beginning to slow down, your brain may still believe it's the middle of the afternoon. And that's exactly what we'll talk about next. Now let's move to the second habit, and this one has very little to do with your bed. It has everything to do with the room around it. Most of us don't notice when evening actually begins. Outside, the sun has already disappeared, but inside our homes, it still looks like the middle of the afternoon. Bright ceiling lights, television screens, kitchen lights, laptop screens, phones held just inches from our faces. Nothing around us tells the body that the day is coming to an end. Everything quietly says, "Stay awake." One thing I appreciate about traditional Japanese living is the quiet idea of kanso. It is often translated as simplicity, but it is more than owning fewer things. It is about removing what no longer needs your attention. That idea can completely change the way an evening feels. As night approaches, the lights become softer, the sounds become quieter, the number of decisions becomes smaller, the room itself begins to slow down, almost as if the house is preparing for sleep before the people inside it are. That may sound like a small detail, but your body notices details like that all the time. Many people think the problem is simply blue light. Blue light certainly matters, but it isn't the whole story. Your brain is responding to 3 different kinds of stimulation. The first is light. Bright light tells your brain that daytime is still happening. The second is content. A warm-colored screen can still keep you awake if it's delivering work emails, breaking news, arguments, or an endless stream of short videos that never quite lets your attention settle. And the third is time. Most of us pick up the phone for 5 minutes. Then, somehow, 45 minutes disappear. The screen doesn't just keep us awake. It quietly steals the time we meant to spend sleeping. So instead of asking, "Should I stop using my phone completely?" try asking a different question. How can I make my evening feel more like evening? Sometimes the answer is surprisingly simple. Dim the overhead lights after a certain hour. Use a small lamp instead of lighting the whole room. Lower your screen brightness. Turn on the night setting. Charge your phone somewhere other than beside your pillow. And if you simply want something to help you unwind, try listening instead of watching. A quiet audiobook. Gentle music. A calming podcast. Something that lets your eyes finally rest. Because darkness is not simply the absence of light, it is the absence of demands. It is the moment your surroundings Stop asking your brain to make one more decision. And once your brain begins receiving that message, your body becomes much more willing to follow. But light is only part of the story. Your brain may now believe that night has arrived. The question is, does your body believe it too? In many Japanese homes, the answer comes through something wonderfully simple: warm water. Now let's talk about the third habit, and this one may be the easiest to begin tonight. It doesn't require buying anything. It doesn't ask you to change your schedule. It simply asks you to change the way you end your day. For many people, a warm bath or shower is something we do to get clean. We rinse off, dry ourselves, brush our teeth, and move on. But in many traditional Japanese homes, bathing has never been only about washing the body. It is about leaving the day behind. There is a reason the Japanese bath, or ofuro, is treated differently. The body is usually washed before entering the bath. The soaking itself is something separate. It isn't another task to finish. It is a pause, a quiet space, a few minutes with nowhere to be and nothing to accomplish, just warmth, stillness, and the feeling that the day no longer needs anything from you. There is something beautiful about that, because work doesn't follow you into the bath. Emails stay outside. Tomorrow's problems wait until tomorrow. Even your phone doesn't need to come with you. For a few minutes, your body is finally allowed to do only one thing: rest. There's another reason this habit can be so helpful. Warm water gently increases blood flow near the surface of your skin. Then, after you step out, your body begins releasing that heat. As your core temperature gradually falls, it supports one of the natural signals your body associates with preparing for sleep. The bath doesn't force sleep. It simply helps your body stop carrying the day. And that may be an even more important difference. Of course, not everyone has a bathtub. That's perfectly okay. A warm shower can have a similar calming effect. You might soak your feet in warm water for 10 minutes. Or simply wash your face, hands, and feet slowly instead of rushing through the routine. Afterward, put on comfortable, breathable sleepwear. Keep the bathroom quiet. Leave work outside the door. Leave the phone outside if you can. The goal isn't to create the perfect Japanese bathroom. The goal is to create one small place where your body no longer feels responsible for anything. One gentle reminder: warm is enough. The water doesn't need to be extremely hot. In fact, very hot baths may not be appropriate for everyone, especially older adults, people with certain heart or blood pressure conditions, or those who are pregnant. Comfort matters much more than intensity, because this habit isn't about shocking your body. It's about reassuring it. When your body begins cooling down afterward, something else quietly begins cooling down too. The feeling that you still have to keep going. But even food, even light, even warm water, still cannot answer one important question. How does your nervous system finally know that the day is truly over? That's where the next Japanese habit becomes surprisingly powerful. Before we move to the next habit, I'd like to pause for a moment, because I don't think our biggest struggle with sleep is really about sleep. It's about saying goodbye to the day. Think about your own evenings for a second. How often have you looked at the clock, realized it was much later than you intended, and still kept scrolling? Most of us have done it. More than once. And it's easy to tell ourselves, I just need more discipline, but I'm not sure that's the real problem. Sometimes we don't stay awake because we enjoy staying awake. Sometimes we stay awake because the day never really felt like ours. From the moment we wake up, someone needs something from us. Work, family, deadlines, messages, bills, appointments, responsibilities that seem to multiply faster than we can finish them. Then finally, late at night, Everything becomes quiet. Nobody is asking for anything. For the first time all day, our attention belongs to us again, and we don't want to let it go. Because going to bed doesn't just mean going to sleep. It means tomorrow is about to begin. So we tell ourselves, just one more video, just one more article, just 5 more minutes. But those 5 minutes quietly become 30, then 45, then an hour. Not because the phone is impossible to resist, but because we're trying to hold on to the last little piece of freedom the day has left us. There's another reason we keep reaching for the screen. Silence has a way of inviting thoughts we've been avoiding, the conversation we wish had gone differently, the decision we've been putting off, the worry we've managed to ignore all afternoon. As long as something is happening on the screen, we don't have to sit alone with what's happening inside us. That's why simply taking the phone away rarely solves the real problem. The phone is often just the symptom. The real question is this: what are we replacing it with? Maybe it's a warm cup of tea, a few pages of a book, a quiet bath, soft music, a journal, or simply sitting still for a few minutes without asking anything of yourself. You may not need more discipline. You may simply need a form of evening freedom that doesn't borrow energy from tomorrow, because we don't always stay awake because the night is enjoyable. Sometimes we stay awake because the day never truly felt like ours. And that's exactly why the next Japanese habit matters. A closing ritual doesn't take your evening away. It gives your evening back to you. This brings us to the 4th habit, and in many ways, it may be the quietest habit of all. Not because it changes your body overnight, but because it changes the way your day comes to an end. Earlier, I mentioned a woman in Kyoto. Let's call her Yuki. Not because she's one specific person. She's really a reflection of many small evening routines that can be found in Japanese homes. Every night, she follows almost the same sequence. Nothing complicated, nothing expensive, nothing that would look impressive on social media. She makes herself a cup of caffeine-free mugicha. She writes 3 simple sentences in a notebook. Sometimes it's something she learned that day. Sometimes it's something she's grateful for. Sometimes it's simply one thought she doesn't want to carry into tomorrow. Then she lays out her clothes, places her keys by the door, prepares her bag for the morning, and that's it. The whole routine takes less than half an hour. What's interesting isn't the tea, or the notebook, or even the preparation. It's the repetition. Our bodies learn through patterns. When the same quiet actions happen in the same order, night after night, your nervous system gradually begins recognizing them as signals. Not signals that sleep has arrived, but signals that it's finally safe to stop being responsible for today. There's something deeply comforting about that, because every decision you make before bed is one less decision waiting for you tomorrow morning. And fewer unfinished decisions often mean fewer unfinished thoughts. You don't need to copy Yuki's routine. In fact, it doesn't need to look Japanese at all. It simply needs to be yours. I like thinking about it in 3 small parts. First, take care of the body. Maybe that's a warm cup of tea, a shower, gentle stretching, a simple skincare routine, or just 5 slow breaths before turning off the lights. Then, take care of the mind. Write 3 sentences. Read a few pages of a book. Make tomorrow's short to-do list. Write down one worry instead of carrying it into bed. Or simply remember one good moment from today. Finally, take care of your environment. Lay out tomorrow's clothes. Put your keys where you'll find them. Prepare your work bag. Clear one small surface. Set the coffee maker if that's part of your morning. None of these things are dramatic. That's exactly why they work. The goal isn't to build the perfect evening routine. It's to build one your body can recognize. Keep it simple enough that you'll actually repeat it. 15 minutes. 20. If you have the time. Consistency matters much more than complexity. There is a quiet quality found in many Japanese evenings that can be described as yoru no shizukesa, the quiet of the night, not silence for its own sake, but the feeling that nothing else is asking for your attention anymore. Your ritual doesn't create that feeling all by itself. It simply gives your mind permission to notice it, because exhaustion may push you into sleep, but ritual gently leads you there. And there's one final habit that's even easier than this one. The surprising part is, it doesn't happen before you fall asleep. It happens during the first few minutes after you wake up. Now we come to the fifth and final habit. And surprisingly, it doesn't happen before you fall asleep. It happens after you wake up. Most of us think waking up is a single moment. The alarm goes off, our eyes open, the day begins. But your body doesn't experience it that way. Waking up is a transition, a gentle crossing from rest back into the world. The problem is, most of us never give ourselves that transition. Before we've even taken a full breath, we're already checking messages, reading headlines, looking at work emails, scrolling through social media. Without realizing it, we've allowed the outside world to arrive before we've even arrived ourselves. One idea from Japanese culture that I find especially helpful here is ma. It's often described as the meaningful space between things, the pause that gives shape to everything around it. While ma was never intended as a sleep rule, I think it's a beautiful way to think about the first moments of the morning. Instead of rushing from sleep straight into responsibility, create a small space in between, just 20 or 30 quiet minutes, not because you're trying to become more productive, but because you're giving your mind a chance to wake up before asking it to carry the weight of the day. You don't need an elaborate morning routine. Keep it simple. Leave your phone where you can't reach it from bed. Sit up slowly. Drink a glass of water or a warm cup of tea. Open the curtains. Let natural morning light reach your eyes. Stretch for a few minutes. Walk around the room. Step outside if you can. Then ask yourself one simple question before opening your notifications. What actually deserves my attention right now? Not everything asking for your attention deserves it immediately. There's something beautifully complete about this rhythm. In the evening, darkness gently tells your body it's time to slow down. In the morning, natural light quietly tells it it's time to wake up again. Your body has been following that rhythm for thousands of years. Sometimes it just needs the chance to hear it again, and perhaps that's the greatest gift you can give yourself every morning. Not efficiency, not productivity, just a few quiet minutes where your attention still belongs to you. Because once the world has your attention, getting it back isn't always easy. So don't let the world arrive before you do. Let your morning begin with you. Not your notifications, not the news, not someone else's urgency, just you. One quiet breath before the rest of the day begins. Before we finish, there's one more thing I'd like to say. Because I don't want this video to leave anyone with the wrong impression. The 5 habits we've talked about tonight can create better conditions for sleep, sometimes much better. But they are not a cure for every reason a person wakes up exhausted. And I think that's important to say. It's easy to look at someone who's always tired and assume they're simply going to bed too late, or spending too much time on their phone, or lacking discipline. Sometimes that's true, but not always. Persistent fatigue can have many different causes. For some people, it may be sleep apnea. For others, chronic insomnia, certain medications, depression or anxiety, hormonal changes, chronic pain, anemia, thyroid conditions, an irregular work schedule, or simply too much caffeine too late in the day. Even alcohol can be misleading. It often makes people feel sleepy. But feeling sleepy isn't always the same as getting deeply restorative sleep. And caffeine has a habit of staying in the body much longer than most of us realize. That's why these 5 habits should never be seen as a magic formula. They're simply ways of creating better conditions. Because good sleep is a little like growing a garden. You can't force a flower to bloom. You can only create the conditions that allow it to happen. The same is true for sleep. If you've been sleeping 7, 8, or even 9 hours, yet you're still waking up exhausted week after week. If you find yourself struggling to stay awake during the day, if someone tells you that you snore loudly, if you wake up gasping for air, if morning headaches have become normal, or if you're simply finding it difficult to function even after what should have been enough sleep, please don't assume it's just something you have to live with, or something you should simply try harder to fix on your own. Sometimes persistent exhaustion isn't a failure of discipline. Sometimes it's your body asking for help, and that's always worth taking seriously. So instead of treating these 5 habits like another set of rules you have to follow perfectly, think of them as a small experiment. Try one. See how your body responds, then try another. Because the goal isn't perfection. The goal is to understand your own body a little better than you did yesterday. We've covered 5 habits tonight. Not 5 rules, not 5 shortcuts. Just 5 small ways to make it a little easier for your body to do what it already knows how to do. Now, I don't want you to leave this video feeling like you have to change your entire life tonight, because that's usually how good intentions disappear. We try to change everything at once. We get overwhelmed. And within a few days, we're back where we started. So, instead, I'd like to invite you to try something much smaller. Think of it as a 3-night experiment. Nothing more. On the first night, change the ending of dinner. If you can, finish eating a little earlier. If that's not realistic, simply make your last meal a little lighter. Avoid going to bed immediately after a heavy dinner. That's all. On the second night, change the feeling of the room. Dim the lights. Leave your phone somewhere outside the bedroom, or at least out of reach for the last 30 minutes before sleep. Instead of scrolling, choose one quieter activity. Read a few pages. Listen to gentle music. Enjoy a warm cup of tea. Let the evening become quieter before you do. On the third night, create a simple closing ritual. It doesn't need to be elaborate. Choose one small action for your body. Perhaps a warm shower. Choose one small action for your mind. Maybe write 3 sentences in a notebook. Then choose one small action for your environment. Lay out tomorrow's clothes. Prepare your bag. Place your keys where you'll find them in the morning. That's enough. The entire ritual can take 15 or 20 minutes. Remember, your body doesn't need perfection. It needs familiarity. Then, each morning, ask yourself only 3 simple questions. Did I fall asleep more easily? Did I wake up during the night? How did I feel during the first 30 minutes after waking? Don't overanalyze every detail. Don't expect one quiet evening to transform years of poor sleep. The goal isn't to prove that one habit has fixed everything. The goal is simply to notice which conditions help your body stop fighting the night. Sometimes the smallest changes teach us the biggest lessons. So, before we finish, let me leave you with the 5 ideas we've explored together. Give dinner an ending. Let the room become evening. Use warm water as a transition. Build a simple ritual that tells your body the day is done. And protect the quiet space between sleep and the world each morning. Because rest is not merely recovery from today. It is preparation for tomorrow. Or perhaps even more simply, a good night's sleep is not something you collapse into. It's something you quietly prepare. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Which part of your evening is stealing the most from your sleep right now? Is it food, light, endless stimulation, or simply the feeling that your day never truly ends? Leave your answer in the comments. Then choose just one small change, not all 5, and try it for the next 3 nights. Come back afterward and tell us what surprised you. You may discover that your body has been trying to help you all along. It was simply waiting for clearer signals. And if you know someone who keeps sleeping longer but never seems to wake up feeling restored, consider sharing this video with them. They may not need another supplement. They may simply need a gentler ending to the day. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of your evenings, and your mornings may slowly begin to feel like they belong to you again. I'll see you in the next video. Before we end, one final note. This video is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you experience persistent fatigue, excessive daytime sleepiness, loud snoring, breathing difficulties during sleep, or any ongoing symptoms that concern you, please consider speaking with a qualified healthcare professional. Taking care of yourself always begins with listening to your body.